This morning I woke up and tired of being at home all day. I decided to plan my next backpacking trip. I need a new backpack. So I got on my computer and I started looking on the web. This company ULA seems interesting. I then went to Yahoo to check my email. I noticed ads from REI and ULA backpacks. How did Yahoo know? After checking my email, I went to Facebook. There was an ad for ULA backpacks, which were on sale on Amazon. And wait, what? You get a free face gaiter? I'm all in. Wow, today's my lucky day. I better not wait. Ever wonder how these websites know what appeals to you? The answer is cookies. Cookies are small files put on your computer by the website you visit, and they can be used to track your browsing activity. All this information is basically sold and shared by companies like Google and Facebook. This information is mostly used for the purpose of targeting and for advertising. Okay, hope you enjoyed my cartoon. So in this video, we'll first talk about cookies at a high level and then zoom in by actually using websites and visiting them and showing you the cookies, looking at what's inside them. And we can even count how many cookies we get when we visit a website like Yahoo, which in that case was over 600 the last time I visited. First, a little history will help us better understand them. Like almost everything else, they were created initially with good intent. I searched the web for history of cookies, and this is what I found out. By the way, the website whatscookingamerica.net has a great selection about everything you want to know about the history of real cookies, from the first cookie to the first chocolate chip cookie and beyond. So let's talk about our cookie. So our cookie was invented by a 24-year-old named Lou in 1994. You can see him in the bottom right on the slide. Lou worked at Netscape, and he was given a problem to solve. An online shopping company didn't want to use precious storage available on their servers to store items in a shopping cart for a user. So Lou came up with the idea of a cookie to store the items in the cart on the user's computer. So people discovered very soon that they could also use the cookie for other things, which in turn has led to the privacy and security issues we have now. Not all cookies are bad. First-party cookies would be an example of good cookies by most people. Third-party cookies are considered bad by some people. You can block first-party or third-party cookies or both on your browser. Personally, I don't, because it tends to break the usability of a website or even make them unusable. There are a lot of tools to monitor cookies and block them to protect you. There are plugins for browsers that you can download, as an example. You may want to consider them if they work for you. However, even if you block every cookie there's still other ways a website can track you. One is fingerprinting, for example, which seems to be taking off now. If you are interested in fingerprinting video, let me know in the comments below. Cookies serve an important role, like Nemo. If you ever seen Finding Nemo movie, you know that Dory can't remember anything. Websites are like Dory. That is to say, they are stateless. In the early years of the web, sites tend to be stateless and pages were static because they were showing the same information with no changes from user to user. Later, websites started to deliver pages with information which were unique to each user. So HTTP, which is what we use, is stateless. It's a stateless protocol, which means each time you open a web page, it is a separate connection to the web server, and the server doesn't know who you are or where you are on the page or what you are doing, just like Dory. Let's now discuss one option to maintain the session between you and the web server. A web server can assign a unique session ID as a cookie to you, and this can be used to identify you, so you don't have to log in each time you click on a link on a web page. So for example, on the Facebook, you don't want to log in each time you click on someone's post, or on an email, let's say Yahoo email, you don't want to re-log in each time you want to open a message. Okay, let's jump right into it, and we'll bring up a couple of different virtual machines here. I'm going to bring up our web server as well as a separate Windows 7 virtual machine, and we'll go ahead and visit some websites, take a look at the cookies, look at what is inside of them and how they're being used. But before I get started, actually, let me back up here because I failed to mention in my presentation what was a first-party cookie and what was a third-party cookie. So basically, a first-party cookie is a cookie that's put on your machine by the website you're visiting. So for example, if you're visiting CNN.com, CNN.com would put a cookie on your machine, and that would be considered a first-party cookie. While you're on CNN.com, other parties may put cookies on your machine. An example would be Facebook, Google, Yahoo, or somebody else. And the way that works is the cookie gets on there either through an ad that's on the CNN.com, it's tied into some invisible image, it's an iframe or something else. And so you're not going to see it, but if you go to any website, you go, for example, to the top 100 sites most people go, and you click on 2 links, you will receive 12,000 cookies or more. All right, so let's go back to our virtual machines. Brought up our web server. I'm going to go here and bring up our Windows machine. All right, so here's our Windows machine. I'm going to bring up a browser. Okay, and I'm going to go to our web server. And here's the application I like to use a lot for demonstrations. So I'm going to log in. And as you can see, I can go between different pages here. So now what happens if I go in and as an example, clear out my cookies. So I'm going to go here to settings and to privacy and security and clear browsing data. And I'm going to clear all my cookies. All right, so I've done that now. Now let's go back to our application. Let me click in any of these other links. And as you can see, now all of a sudden the website doesn't know who I am because I deleted that cookie that it was using to identify me. So let me go back in again. So that shows that the website is stateless. So it needs some way of tracking you. And the way it's doing it on this website is through a cookie. And what is inside of the cookie is a session ID that's unique to me and identifies me as the person who's visiting that website. And let's just go ahead and actually take a look at the cookie. There are a lot of different things on the left side, but the one that I'm interested in particular right now is cookies. So I come here, and here's our website that we're visiting. So if I click on that, you'll notice that that's our cookie. That's keeping track of our session. There is a value, which is some long number, and that's our session ID. And so when I clear out the cookie, or I delete the cookie, basically this is what's being deleted. All right, so let's go ahead and now visit a real website. So let's pick yahoo.com. So yahoo.com is still loading, but let's go ahead and take a look at what cookies have been downloaded to our Windows machine here so far. And I'm going to take a look at what's in cookies. And so as you can see, there's already quite a bit of different sites that have put cookies on our system. So we see Yahoo, we see DoubleClick, which is Google, is owned by Google. We see another one by Google. We see Amazon. So an example of first-party cookie would be the Yahoo site. And everything else that you see here that's not Yahoo, it's basically would be considered as a third party. So let's look at what cookies has Yahoo put in on our system. So as you can see, there's a long list. There's a bunch of cookies, just Yahoo by itself. So, and if you go look at each one of these other, let's look at Google, you can see again a long list of different cookies that are just downloaded into our machine just by this site owned by Google. All these cookies also have what they call different expiration dates. So if you go down here, like we can see, for example, this particular one expires in May 5th of 2022. So that's reassuring to know. I don't have to worry about that for a couple of years. Next, let's talk a little bit about what are some of the things that we can do or steps that we can take to protect our privacy. Before I get started, one thing that I wanted to mention about first-party cookies was that they can also be used in a third-party context. And that's important because a lot of people have this perception that if they block third-party cookies, that they're good to go. And that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of different ways that you can get around that. So an example of what I just mentioned is social sites like Facebook can place the like button, or you have the Twitter button, and those are all examples of how those sites can track you in a first-party context. So what are some steps we can take to protect our privacy? First, let's take a look at some of the tools that are out there to assess our browser. There are many tools. This one is called Panoptic Click. Go ahead and click on Test Me and see how well am I doing, or how well my browser is protecting me. So it'll take it a few seconds. It'll go and test my browser. But so basically it answers some basic questions. Is my browser blocking ads? And the answer to that is no. Does your browser unblock third parties that promise to honor do not track? No. A lot of the browsers have what they call private mode. They don't work very well, but they do provide some benefits. You can also implement or download plugins for your browser. There's a lot of different things out there. There's uBlock, there's Ghostery, there's AdBlock Plus, there's Privacy Badger, and many, many more plugins that you can use. You can disable JavaScript and Flash. Definitely disable Flash. You can put on anti-malware tools. You can use a VPN, and there's hundreds of VPNs out there. If you choose to use a VPN service, do your research because they're not all the same. You can use the Tor browser. So let me show you actually really quick. I don't personally use it because it's extremely slow. And here's how it works. So when you use the Tor browser, basically it sends you through a lot of different relays or systems out there on the internet to basically hide your tracks. I'm not 100% sure that it works. They advertise themselves as a browser to be used like for like in countries like Iran or China, where there may be restrictions and you may want to have journalists who want to report things and they want to basically hide their tracks. But I've been doing some experiments with fingerprints, and I'm not sure. I don't have the latest Tor browser, so I'm not 100% sure. But the older versions, you can get identified basically through fingerprinting and some other ways. So what else? We talked about Tor browser, VPN. You can also use the DuckDuckGo search engine. So that's similar to Google. Obviously, Google is the best. They have the best indexes. They have the best web crawlers. You get the best results for them. So I personally use Google. But if you want a search engine that doesn't track you, then you may want to consider DuckDuckGo. Because DuckDuckGo, their big thing is we don't track you. Some of the other things that I want to talk to you about was, as far as tracking goes, don't forget about devices like smart TVs or Roku or Amazon Fire Stick, because these all also track you. So it's just not your PC that uses cookies and tracks you. All these devices also send information back. It's interesting because I was just reading an article that was done by researchers at Princeton and University of Chicago. And they looked at the Roku and the Amazon set-top device. And looking at 2,000 channels across these two platforms, they found that 79% of the Roku channels and 89% of the Amazon Fire TV channels were being tracked. The other thing that I want to talk to you guys about was talk a little bit about the different browsers. Obviously, In terms of security or privacy, something like Tor browser would be the top. But also what I found is Apple's Safari is pretty good. So about 3 years ago, Apple started touting their privacy as a selling point. And so they put in a lot of things in place to stop third-party trackers. And this year, actually, they put the latest Safari browser basically doesn't allow any third-party trackers. So if you use Safari, it won't accept any third-party trackers to put in cookies or anything on your system. The same is true with Firefox. And Google is following basically right behind them. They just announced that they're going to phase out third-party cookie support, and they won't accept third-party cookies through their browser over the next 2 years. So you have to wonder, you understand why Apple would do that, because most of their revenue is tied into products like their iPhones, their laptops. But Google, the vast majority of their profits come from advertising. And they're the biggest tracker out there as far as selling that information. So why would Google even think about doing something like that? So you have to stop and think about that a little bit. And I think it's because there are going to be other ways to track you. And Google already tracks you through their search engine, which everybody uses. And what they're doing is, I believe they're trying to push everyone else out. So basically, they become the sole party to go to if you want to get that type of information. I may be wrong, and I'm sure there's going to be innovation, and there are going to be new technologies, and there are some smart people there that are going to figure out how to do things like through fingerprinting. But that's, I think, where we're going. The other reason why I think Google is doing that is because they're sort of like in the driver's seat. If you go to Stat Counter here and you take a look at what percentage of browsers out there are Chrome, you can see that the vast majority are 60% are Chrome, 20% are Safari. Actually, let me go here. I'm going to change the chart type to bar. I think you can see that better. We'll wait for it for a second here to refresh. So again, you can see that Chrome basically is in the driver's seat. So they're going to be able to control things. And there's no wonder that they're actually phasing out third-party support. If you go down here, you have some other options. If I click on, for example, let's just put on the US, I think that number is probably going to be even bigger. Oh, actually, so it's actually 45%, and Safari is 40% in the US as far as browsers are being used. Well, I can go on for a very long time, but I think I'm going to stop here. Hopefully this video has been helpful. If there are things that you want me to cover more in depth, or if there are things that I've missed, please put it in the comments section below and I will take a look at it. Thank you. Before I go, let me give you a quick update on some of the things I'm working on. I'm working on several different videos. One is to find out what exactly Google collects on us. And I've actually requested all the information that Google has ever collected on me. So they're working on it, and there's some 55 products, anything from Android devices to calendar, to pictures and maps and everything else that you can think of. They're telling me that it's going to take them 2 or 3 days, and then they're going to send me a link or multiple links, because each link is going to have basically like 2 gigs of data stored at that location. So it's going to take me a while, but once I've done that, I'll let you know. The main reason why I'm doing that is, one, to find out, and it's not to say Google's bad or good. There are a lot of good things. I'll give you an example. So I redid my Yosemite backpacking trip, and I want to do a flyover like on Earth on my route, so I can see the terrain and everything from point A to point B. And I had to coordinate to everything, because I basically had turned location tracking on my phone, and every time I would take a picture or video, it would stamp it with the GPS coordinates, which is what I wanted. However, there was one location where, for some reason, I didn't have any pictures. Well, that was because I didn't take any pictures or video. And that's was at Sunrise Creek is where I had camped. So I didn't know, but I figured that Google probably did. So I went back on my timeline and I was able to see on the map exactly where I had camped and pull those coordinates and then plug those into my route so I could do my flyover and could see the satellite images and the terrain. And it's actually pretty cool. So if you want to check it out, go look at the video. I also added some video that I hadn't added before. I removed some pictures. And I think the part that does a flyover is pretty cool. So check it out. But that's just one example. There's 3 other projects that I'm working on having to do with security and different vulnerabilities. And if you're interested in those, let me know. I'll be glad to post those or make those public as well.